I spent 3 years saving for a future with my girlfriend while her family was racist, controlled our relationship, and treated me like trash. She wouldn't share a bed with me, refused to move out or set any timeline, so I finally did what was best. Then she came saying sorry. I'm a 29-year-old man, and I recently broke up with my now ex, a 28-year-old woman, after being together for 3 years. The breakup itself happened over a message, which I know sounds cold and cowardly on the surface, but there is a lot of context that led up to that decision. Enough context that I still find myself replaying everything in my head, wondering if I handled it the wrong way, or if it was simply the only way I could finally do it. We lived in different parts of the country. I'm based in a major city, while she lives in a more rural area. It wasn't technically long distance in the sense of flights and time zones, but we couldn't just pop over to each other's places either. Every visit required planning, money, and a train ride. The distance wasn't ideal, but I accepted it because I genuinely thought that eventually we would close that gap and move in together. For the better part of 5 years, I've been saving aggressively. I've worked hard, and I've been fortunate enough to land a well-paying job that finally gave me financial independence. I'm proud of that, not because of the money itself, but because of what it represents: stability, security, and the ability to plan for the future. My ex works a minimum wage job. It's not glamorous and it doesn't pay much, but it made her happy, and I never looked down on her for it. If anything, I admired that she valued her own happiness over chasing money. That said, when we talked about moving in together, it always felt obvious to me that the practical solution would be for her to move closer to where I live. My job is tied to the city, and it would make far more sense for me to keep my well-paying role than to give it up, so we could live somewhere with fewer opportunities. I was willing to support her through finding a new job, transitioning, and adjusting. I wasn't demanding she give up her happiness. I just wanted us to build a life that worked for both of us in the long term. The biggest and most painful issue, though, was her parents, especially her mother. From very early on, it was clear that they did not like me. Not in a subtle, awkward way, but in a direct, hostile, and deeply disrespectful way. I have been called a liar. I've been called an addict. I've been insulted repeatedly because of my weight. I've been judged because of my background, with her mother making comments rooted in assumptions about Muslims, even though I was raised Christian and don't practice Islam at all. Some of the comments still echo in my head. I remember being told that it was incorrect for my family to eat meats other than turkey at Christmas, as if my upbringing was somehow invalid or fake. I remember her mother telling me to my face that I was raised wrong, criticizing my mannerisms, my appearance, and my values. I was told that our relationship was doomed to fail because we weren't living together yet, even though we had been together for over 2 years and were actively discussing how to close the distance. Every time something like this happened, it chipped away at me. I tried to brush it off at first. I told myself I was being too sensitive, that maybe she didn't mean it that way, that older generations say stupid things. But it kept happening. And eventually, it stopped feeling like isolated comments and started feeling like outright contempt. Whenever I brought this up to my ex, one of two things would happen. Either she would minimize it and say her mother didn't mean it, that I was taking it too personally, or that it was just how she was. Or she would shut the conversation down entirely, saying she didn't want to talk about it. Meanwhile, I desperately wanted to talk about it because it was eating away at me. I needed to know that my partner had my back. What made it harder was the contrast with my own parents. My parents have always treated her with kindness and respect. And on the rare occasions they said something that upset her, I didn't hesitate to step in. I took her side. I explained to my parents that she made me happy and that if they wanted to be part of my life, they would have to accept her and treat her properly. I never asked her to just ignore it. I never told her it didn't matter. For a long time, I held on to the hope that all of this would eventually become a non-issue. I told myself that once we moved out, once we had our own space and our own life, the constant tension with her parents would fade into the background. Distance, I thought, would create peace. That belief is probably what kept me going longer than I should have. From the very beginning of our relationship, my partner was clear about one thing. She would not move out of her parents' house until her dogs passed away. I accepted that without argument. I understood the bond she had with them, and I didn't see it as unreasonable at the time. I told her it wouldn't be an issue, and I meant it. Over the years, I grew attached to the dogs myself. I dog-sat them more than once, enjoyed their company, and genuinely cared about them. Unfortunately, one of them passed away earlier this year. The other had a health scare not long after, but thankfully pulled through. That said, the remaining dog is nearing 18 years old. As painful as it is to acknowledge, she likely doesn't have much time left, and even if we had moved in together, She would have been far too old to relocate anyway. In April of 2024, things reached another breaking point with her mother. There was yet another episode of her mother telling me I wasn't good enough, that I was wrong, that I wasn't the kind of person her daughter should be with. This time, it escalated further. Her mother threatened to kick my ex out of the house and move away without telling her where they were going. At the time, my ex was visiting me, and the situation was genuinely frightening. We talked seriously about what would happen if she suddenly had nowhere to live. While she was with me, we looked at a neighborhood near some of my friends. It was a nice area, affordable, and full of opportunities. There were plenty of places where she could find work, including branches of the same company she already worked for. It felt like a realistic, tangible option, not a fantasy, not pressure, just a possible solution if things at home became unbearable. But in the end, she decided she wasn't ready. I didn't push. I wanted her to feel safe and supported, not rushed or cornered. Eventually, she made up with her mother, and the crisis passed, at least on the surface. Over time, patterns became clearer to me. Her mother didn't get along with her previous neighbor. She wasn't on speaking terms with her own sister or with her other daughter, my ex's sister. There was constant conflict, constant fallout, and yet my ex remained deeply tied to that household. At one point, my ex wanted to go abroad. Her parents promised they would help her get a passport, but they never followed through. Months passed with excuses and delays. In the end, I was the one who helped her get her passport successfully. I didn't do it for credit or praise. I did it because I wanted her to have opportunities, experiences, and a life beyond the walls of her parents' home. More recently, her father had a serious health scare involving his heart. He's past retirement age, but can't afford to retire. He spent over a month in the hospital, and while he thankfully pulled through, the situation shook the entire family. I truly believe this is another major reason why my partner felt unable to leave home. I don't fault her for that. I understand the fear, the guilt, and the sense of responsibility that comes with a parent's declining health. I want to be very clear about this. I understood her reasons for staying. I understood her love for her dogs. I understood her concern for her father. I understood that she had been upfront from the beginning about not moving out until certain conditions were met. I don't think she lied to me. I don't think she was trying to trap me. But understanding something doesn't make it painless. As time went on, I started to realize that I was putting my entire life on hold while the timeline for our future remained completely undefined. Years were passing. I was getting older. I had built stability for myself, and yet I had no idea if or when we would ever truly build a life together. Eventually, I needed clarity. Not an ultimatum, not a demand, just honesty. So I asked her a simple question. Would you be ready to move out within the next 10 years? Her answer was, I don't know. That answer shattered me. It wasn't just the words themselves, but what they represented. 10 years is a long time. It's not a rushed deadline. It's not pressure to move tomorrow. It was me asking whether there was even a shared vision of a future where we lived together, built a home together, and existed as partners rather than visitors in each other's lives. Hearing I don't know made something painfully clear to me. I was more committed to a future with her than she was able or willing to imagine with me. I wasn't asking her to abandon her family or her responsibilities. I was asking whether there was space for me in her long-term life at all. That moment broke my heart because it forced me to confront a truth I had been avoiding for years. Love alone wasn't enough to carry this relationship forward. Patience alone wasn't enough. Compromise only works when both people are moving toward the same destination, even if they take different paths to get there. And suddenly, I wasn't sure we were walking toward the same future anymore. After that conversation about the future or lack of one, I felt completely hollowed out. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, and I kept replaying her answer in my head over and over again. I loved her deeply, and despite everything, a part of me still hoped that if I could just talk to her properly, face to face, she might finally understand how much pain I was in and how serious this all felt to me. So I decided to go up and visit her for 2 days. I went there emotionally raw, heartbroken, and genuinely trying to save what we had left. My intention was simple. I wanted one-on-one time with my partner so we could talk honestly about our relationship, our future, and whether there was any realistic path forward. Almost immediately, though, I felt like that space didn't exist. When I suggested going out to eat together, just the two of us, she said she would only go if her parents could come as well. It felt like a punch to the gut. I wasn't trying to exclude anyone out of spite. I just needed time with my partner, without an audience, without the constant shadow of her parents' opinions looming over us. But that wasn't an option. Everything had to be filtered through them. When it came time for me to head home, I tried again. I told her I'd like us to go to the station together, so we could talk in private before I left. Instead, she insisted that her mother drive me to the nearest station. Once again, the opportunity for an honest, uninterrupted conversation disappeared. I felt like a child being supervised rather than an adult in a 3-year relationship. While I was there, her mother also didn't allow us to share a bed. We slept separately. I asked my ex if that upset her, because it certainly upset me. She told me it did bother her, but that she wanted to respect her mother's rules. Hearing that made something sink in painfully clearly. No matter how old we were, no matter how long we'd been together, her mother's authority came first. I wasn't her partner in that house. I was a guest who had to follow rules that actively undermined our relationship. I left feeling worse than when I arrived. The visit didn't bring clarity or reassurance. It confirmed everything I'd been afraid to admit to myself. I wasn't building a life with her. I was orbiting around a family system where I would always be secondary, always tolerated at best, and often disrespected outright. After I got home, I reached my breaking point. The weight of everything I'd been carrying finally became too heavy. I tried calling her, needing to hear her voice, needing to feel like I mattered enough for a real conversation. She answered and told me she was at work and couldn't talk. Given the nature of her job, her hours were inconsistent, so I hadn't known she was working when I called. She said she was too busy to stay on the phone. I didn't expect a response right away, but I needed to say something. I needed to get the words out before I lost the nerve. So I poured my heart out over text. I told her how unhappy I was, how lost I felt, how the lack of a future was tearing me apart, and how I couldn't keep living in limbo anymore. Her reply was short. I can't reply to this right now, but are you breaking up with me? Seeing that question on my screen felt surreal. I hadn't explicitly said the words yet, but in that moment, I realized the answer was yes. I replied, and told her that I was. That was it. That was how a 3-year relationship ended, over text in fragments, because there never seemed to be space for my feelings in real time. We haven't spoken since. It's been nearly 2 months. Now, I'm on the verge of moving into a 1-bedroom apartment on my own. This time last year, I genuinely believed we would soon be sharing a home together, something we owned equally, something that symbolized a future we were building side by side. Instead, I'm starting over alone. I spoke to a mutual friend about everything. He told me that breaking up over text wasn't ideal, and I agree with that. It's not how I imagined the end of our relationship. But he also said that if he were in my position, he would have left too. Hearing that helped, even if it didn't erase the guilt. I feel like an asshole some days. I replay that final exchange and wonder if I should have waited, tried harder, driven back up there, or swallowed my feelings yet again. At the same time, I feel like I finally stood up for myself for the first time in years. There's a strange mix of grief and relief inside me. The grief is heavy, but the relief, the absence of constant anxiety, uncertainty, and feeling like I'm begging for a future, is undeniable. For clarity, I want to add this. I didn't set out to break up with her over text. When she said she couldn't talk at work, I wrote my message without expecting a reply until later. I didn't introduce the idea of breaking up in that message. I told her I was unhappy and overwhelmed. She was the one who asked if I was breaking up with her, and when she did, I answered honestly. I still feel selfish. I still question myself. But I also know that staying would have meant continuing to erase my own needs and postponing my life indefinitely. Writing this all out helps me process it, even if it doesn't give me a clean answer. So here I am, caught between guilt and freedom, asking the question I can't stop circling back to. Am I a whole?